Some say there's no lack of good ideas in today's business world, yet 50% of these ideas are doomed to failure. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because today's guest says there's a better way to make plan and execute these ideas. And he's here to tell us how.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Alex Castro, is an aligner of execution to strategy for digital transformation and innovation. He's a best-selling author and creator, founder of ReM Score, and he's trademarked that. Alex believes that the gap between ideas and execution is a persistent problem that's sidelining too many high-potential digital transformation and innovation growth opportunities. No arguing from me. Glad to have you with us, so welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you, sir. So happy to be here.
Good. Well, it's good to have you here, and let's dive right in. And with you, I want to start with these good ideas that are doomed to failure. Is it the idea, the execution, or both?
Well, if I can kind of start with the preamble of it, is that what happens is that there's a lot of sort of confusion of idea failure versus execution failure, right? And a lot of times what happens is that people attribute the inability to actually roll out the idea, right? So are we going to implement artificial intelligence? Are we going to create a new product and roll it into the market? Are we going to go and migrate to the cloud and or acquire a company and have them come on in? Was it a bad idea, or did we just not do it well, right? And I'm more on the side of doing it well. The idea part really goes through so much analysis in today's world. There's so many systems and processes that companies have developed and people have developed and saying, hey, that's something I want to invest in or a path we want to go down. And that has so many different variations in terms of how people interpret that, right? And we really don't touch that. And I don't really talk about that very much. More what I talk about is now that you've committed to it, right? We're going to go acquire this company. I want to begin to implement artificial intelligence or intelligent automation and start to take a look at what I'm doing. Can I actually execute it? Can I actually put all the parts and pieces together and actually have something in the end that's cogent and effective and producing results? And that's where the majority of the watershedding happens, where people say, hey, look, we've gone through the analysis. We're going to go and invest in this opportunity. And suddenly they're halfway through and they're having to cancel the effort of the project, or it's just not generating the results.
Yeah. I'm always curious because I've seen many a good idea sail off to failure. And so for me, that's always confusing. Did they not problem solve it right? In other words, did they just jump at the most obvious idea, not really go through a process? Did they get themselves a good idea and then just not really commit to implementation? Well, one of the, and I'm curious on your reaction to this, but one of the filters I used to always use when I was at Xerox was, do we have a realistic shot of actually accomplishing this idea?
That's
because
right.
Alex, sometimes a process can take you all the way minus that filter. In other words, it fits all the pieces until you say, yeah, but I mean, can we realistically do that? Oh yeah, no, we can't. But we followed a process to get here. That's what scares me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what happens is something called cognitive bias, right? We as human beings like to look for things that either confirm what we believe or what we want to believe, or we like to jump onto a bandwagon, or we like to have that Monte Carlo effect, or, there's a lot of different cognitive biases. And what basically cognitive biases is to the listener is you're basically skewing how you're looking at something because of a personal perspective, right? There's folks that talk to you as like, well, my gut's telling me this. Well, that's a bias, right? My experience tells me this is the way it's going to go. That's a bias, right? And what we've really discovered is that the potential for transformative work to change the direction of your company or augment the direction of your career or your company is there, right? We're all very well trained in how to process information in terms of, hey, there's an opportunity in front of us. Do we go and run after that thing, right? That's that part that I was talking about. Is it a good idea? The second part is then it's like, oh, well, now that I've gone through this hyper analysis on the idea, it's like, all right, let's just get some people here and, go do that thing, as if that's the easier part. Right. And, there's all those kinds of sayings, it's like the idea is easy, the execution is the hard part. Right. So once we get into the throes of it, then people just want to, bum rush the door. Right. They want to go and start, well, let's just get going and then we'll figure it out as we go along. Well, that doesn't work. Like half the time you do that in a business environment, it just doesn't work out flat out. Either you abandon it or it fails outright. So the way that I encourage people to take a look at their transformation and what they want to do, as a transformative effort is, if you were lending somebody money, if you were a bank or some kind of a lending institution, right? Would you look at their success rate, right? Would you look at their credit score? Would you look at those things that say, hey, this person's good at paying back on the idea, right? And the reality is that right now, half the time, it flat out doesn't pan out, right? So how do we increase that? How do we elevate getting through that gauntlet of the doing, of putting all the parts and pieces together and getting it to the other side, so now we can launch it to market or get the AI to work or get the acquisition to work? And that's really what we want to focus on, because there's a lot of good transformation work that's going on out there. There's great transformation strategy that's going on out there. And we're just stuck in 1990s execution models. We're stuck in this belief structure that we're just going to get into it, we're going to figure it out, or we'll push it through. And I'll tell you that simply maybe the top 10% of the S&P 500 can use that strategy because they have the money, they have the reach, they have the clout, they can go grab the best of the best and bring it into the business and just jam that idea through the pipe to the other side. The other, 99% of us out there who are running businesses, regardless of scale, we have to have a weighted risk approach to how we're going to do things. And the challenge is that too much opportunity is getting left on the table. And what I like to focus on is, from a transformation approach, what's your transformation readiness? What's your transformation capability to actually do that thing? And really look at it from a change approach, from an execution approach, in getting those elements in line, get that alignment, right? We've always heard that term, alignment, get all of those ducks in a row. So when you get to it, it's like boom, 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 boom. You're walking the domino path, right? You're not trying to sort stuff out as you go along.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, a couple of pieces that you said, one of them I really like is that term you used, the cognitive biases. I never knew, it was one of those things, I didn't know what you called it, but I sure saw it a lot, working in the corporation, but but I love it because the moment you said that, it was like, well, it was like the smell of grass. I mean, boy, is that powerful. And there's a word for it. The thing that I saw for me was, until I learned how to problem solve and at least follow a process, do we follow a process at the next step? But that cognitive bias would drive people towards obsessing on the fact that they knew what the problem was that they were trying to fix. And rather than study the problem, well, how many times have you heard this one before? Right. Obsessing on the shiny nickel in the corner, it's a whole lot more fun to sit and come up with great ideas. And who knows, maybe we're on our game, so we'll contract that list and really do a great job. But to me, where it goes off the rail is, do you really understand what the problem is? And did you really study the problem? Or were you driven by, my new word of the day, your cognitive biases? Right. Because I think that we lose it on the problem, not the solution. At least that's my version of it. You're the author, but how am I doing?
Good. You're doing well. Yeah. I mean, look, it's pretty intuitive. I mean, in the sense that, there's those people out there that you'll run into and have a conversation with where they think they've got the unicorn, right? It's like, oh, I've got this idea, right? And it's like, okay, that's it. To your point, it's that person saying, oh, I've got these amazing ideas. It's like, okay, great, that's great coffee talk and whatever, but we're going to leave those to the side. And then there are those who are trying to pivot a business in a big, big way, and again, those are sort of on the tail end of that sort of distribution curve, right, in terms of what's happening. But the heart of it is that we're either running a company or we're trying to transform the way we do our business, or more importantly, we're working within a larger entity, right? Like at a Xerox or something like that. And you're making a career for yourself, right? You're trying to drive sort of and make your contribution to the business. You're trying to keep yourself doing something interesting. You've got opportunities in front of you. You're good at what you do, right? You understand. You can see it, right? I kind of refer to it in many ways like you're the running back and you can see the gap in the line and you're just running for it, right? You can see it. Now, you can go through the process of validating, is that the right idea? Is it the right thing to do, like we just talked about? And again, there's a process for doing a lot of that stuff. And a lot of times, some great ideas get killed in that process and so on and so forth. But really what I'm talking about is like, all right, you've gotten the green light. It's your baby. Now you got to run with it. This thing is either going to catapult your career forward, or it's going to be the thing that people look at you and say, yeah, we gave you this opportunity, but you didn't, you didn't execute on it, right? And that's the thing that I think impacts a lot of us, because we can see the gap in the line. We can see the opportunity in front of us. We can see the potential of what the idea has. Now, how do you get it all to connect so that you're not, 10% in and suddenly you open up this can of worms and you're dealing with all, you go from doing one effort to doing 10 efforts because there's 9 other things that had to be in alignment for your one thing to actually move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally, I think that's where, your classic expansion and contraction theories come from. So, I know what the problem is. Yeah, well, let's expand before we contract. All right. We all know that we're going to have to do X. No, let's expand before we contract.
Right.
People, it was sort of sad that, the quality of the 80s and into the 90s got such a bad rap that we call it process reengineering. We came up with other words for it because it represented sort of the poster child of, oh yeah, we invested in that and nobody really utilized it. But I always go back to implementation. I don't think the process has failed us. I think our ability to understand how to implement them failed us.
All of the things that need to be in alignment for that specific effort that you just either trust or hope are in alignment. And the reality is 70% of the time they're not.
Yeah.
And then compound that with the speed of business today, and there's zero recovery. Again, I'll go back to sports. It's like you watch sports today and the velocity of the game, you're either breaking away and doing the thing you're supposed to, or you're done. Like there's no sort of take a step, wait for something to happen, retrench, try to go again. It just doesn't work that way. And more importantly, we all understand that strategy is changing at a minimum twice a year in our business cycle, right? You put a strat plan together, you're out there, the market is changing twice a year on you. And now you have to adapt and move. So if you have a 9-month effort, if you have a project that's taking you a year and a half, you're probably 2 cycles out of step with what's going on. So now you have that pressure. Then the people in the business that you're depending on to work on your project or do whatever it is you want to do, they're being pulled into other directions because their ambitions or their careers or their priorities are changing. And then on top of it all, the customer or the end user of whatever it is you want to do, their needs are evolving. And how do you understand that before you go into something, can you actually get it done? Can you actually make it work?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we calculate, right? It's like we actually use machine learning to calculate that. and we calculate it in a matter of days instead of it, typically, you get a consulting group in, and it takes them a month, 3 months to give you some feedback, and you go through the iterations, and you get to the end of this whole process and the document, and you're honestly no better off than you were before, right? And more importantly, people today just don't have the patience to wait, right? They just want to go. They want to start going. So how do you get insight that much faster? How do you understand what's not in alignment? How do you fix that so then your execution goes twice as fast? Like, at the end of the day, that's really what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So let's stay there. Now,
Okay.
you use the word we. Is that your company, or is that what you help us, the we, learn? But who's we in this?
Well, obviously my company, we have a product that does this, but more importantly, what I tend to talk to the audience about.
Me and the audience, got it.
You and the audience, is that sometimes, there's a great term in the military that says sometimes you got to go slow to go fast, right? And the reality is that just blundering into doing work doesn't create progress. I've had many conversations with many leaders over the years. And what I tend to say to them is, a drowning person's doing something. They're flailing, they're moving around, they're generating, they're doing stuff, they're making movement, but they're just not going anywhere. And more importantly, that generation isn't helping them at all in any way.
Right. Who was it? John Wooden had his book out, Be Quick, but Don't Hurry. I think that almost sounds like a similar thing there. And I used to use it as a basketball coach, actually, when I was teaching kids to play, because, you can be quick, but you still have to slow and, a little bit, line up your shoulders and get that release going. Yeah.
But there has to be some sequence of alignment, right?
Yeah.
To your point, right? You just don't go, just blasting into the lane.
Right.
It's just not going to work.
Right.
And so, it's the same thing in business. And I think that people's franticness to want to get moving, to get going, because to them, it's once you kick off an effort, many people feel that once we've initiated, there is a whole lot less chance that I'm going to get told no to go forward. So people just want to get things kicked off. They just want to get the project kicked off. They want to get the acquisition kicked off. They want to start working on the product, because now you can turn to your superior and say, well, we've already invested all this time. Why would I stop?
Right.
And that's not the right attitude.
Okay. So let's stay with this a little bit longer. You're the creator of this ReM Score. I noticed you've got a trademark. Has that registered yet, or is it still pending?
Oh, it's fully registered. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a product we've been using for about 10 years with our clients.
Good. Okay.
And what happens is that they tend to see 50% faster implementation at about 2/3 the cost. And, now that we're in this age of transformation, and a lot of companies have transformation like departments, transformation groups internally, this is in essence to aid that in really calculating it, not just opinionating about it, right? Which is what most consultancies do for you. They come in and give you this big opinion, but it's more, how do you calculate what's out of line?
Okay. And you do that for companies?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
I mean, what we do is, we developed it into a tool that fundamentally you can do this in anywhere between 1 and 5 days, which would, typically take you about 3 weeks to 3 months to do, right? Depending on what you're looking for. And what we also find is that most manual processes focus in the wrong direction. Right. So if you have a technology project, all they focus on is the technology. If you have an acquisition, all they focus on is, the growth around it. Right. But those aren't the things that affect those projects. Right. It's, does the business know what it's doing, or is it just simply following a set of rules that were published by somebody else 10 years ago? Yeah. Yeah. And if that's the case, then,
Right. And is that what you would prefer to? Because I was, doing my reading on you, and, you used the term blind spots.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to? Just kind of getting at these unconscious incompetence, these things we don't know that we don't know. I mean, I would call that a blind spot in a sense, but
Sure.
is that what the tool does?
Yeah. I mean, look, we measure 14 different areas, what we call
Okay.
domains, in that context that really affect implementation, right, and deployment. Again, that cognitive bias forces us to ignore those things because we just don't want the reality to creep in and understand that we're not in alignment. Because in our perception, in our corporate perception, it's like, oh, if I have to slow down to fix all these areas and my management gets wind of it, then they're looking at things and saying, oh my, if we have to do all this work now, I'm not sure we really should be doing this project. Why don't we defer that for a while? And suddenly your opportunity is going to go away. But what's worse is that the potential of your idea going away, or the potential that you're halfway through, or, all the way through, and you have just a big, bad mess in front of you that now is stuck to your career forever and ever.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think most people overlook. It's like, no, I can fix it. I can get it there. I can get it. It's like, it's like, no, once it goes bad, you're bad.
Right. Right. And folks, if you're looking for that book, it's Measure, Execute, Win, Avoiding Strategic Initiative Debacles and Knowing What Your Business Can and Can't Do Well. And we can get that on Amazon. I saw it sitting there. I saw an ebook.
And Audible.
And Audible. Good. Did you do the read?
I did. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I always like when authors do their own reads. I want it to be authentic, and I can't get more authentic than the actual author. And now some of them can't do it. And I've interviewed some of them, and I don't even ask. I go, I'm hoping you didn't do your own read. But I think you've got some good bounce in your voice. It'd be a good read. So we got it on Audible. We got paperback. We got ebook, the whole shooting gallery. Good.
The whole shooting gallery. Yeah.
Good. And I saw it came out. It's relatively new. Came out in 2019. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So that answers that. Let's see. It makes all the sense in the world, and yet leaders struggle with this. I'm usually talking to a lot of salespeople in here, so I want to sell these leaders a little bit. But how do there's logic and there's instinct. So what you're saying is logical, but we both know that people fight that instinct. So how do we get around that? How do we get leaders to jump on the bandwagon here?
Well, I think that, what we're seeing, especially right now, end of 22, going into 23, is that we're in some recessionary behavior right now, right? And companies are starting to do reductions in force. That means that non-revenue generation, non-sort of core work is being, released. We'll put it in a kind way. And that means that there's less resources to actually do what needs to be done. Really what we're driving and a bit pioneering is that the world is shifting into a virtualized environment that you need to be able to find insight very quickly. You need to have better data-driven decision-making, that you can't rely on your gut or just making quick, fast decisions that are not grounded in some kind of fact-based model, right? And especially in a model that isn't like just full of opinions and I want. And, if you really look at the companies that are driving more net growth, it's those that are really leveraging data to make decisions, ones that are making calculated risks and continuing to gather that data to make better decisions. And so, ReM Score was developed as a mechanism to help leaders make better, faster decisions, right? Do we go in that direction? Do we go in another direction? And more importantly, your audience, I'm sure the listener right now is like, yeah, I've got 5 possible things I want to do. Which one do I pick? Right? Which one do I do? Because you're going to gravitate to the thing that has the biggest possible upside to it. But if you can't get that thing to go, if you can't get that idea to go, that new product, the cloud migration, the new market you want to move into, whatever it may be, you've left a potential other idea that may not have been as attractive or had as much sort of shininess to it, but would have incrementally moved your agenda as a business forward, right? And so what we're trying to do is that next incremental step is the fact that a lot of human-based stuff it needs to be more automated. So I'll give it in the context of sales, right? What we've been seeing is that the market is moving more towards like product-led growth, right? In the sense that you put a product out, you let users use it for free, and what lots of sources like, LinkedIn and Google and others are driving is that most buyers today, right? So LinkedIn published some content earlier this year that talked about the fact that 95% of buyers in LinkedIn are not ready to buy whatever it is you're selling. Only 5% of people in LinkedIn are in a buying motion when you're outbound marketing to them. And LinkedIn's position is you have to continuously feed and nurture those things to get to that point. Now, what happens is you take that to the next level is that most buyers want to do all the research and do everything they want on their own. And the last 10% of the journey is with a salesperson. Like they don't want to talk to a salesperson first. They want to make all their buying decision and then go to the salesperson to do the deal, as it were. And this migration in terms of buying behavior, in terms of market behavior, in terms of the fact of self-service, automation, all those kinds of things, means that you have to be able to keep in step with that process. So if you're launching a new product or you're going into a new market or you're acquiring a company and integrating in that, all of these things have to begin to connect in a way that's virtualized, that's data-driven, and selecting what to do is part of that. And that's really what we're trying to touch on, right? Is the sense that when you've got 10 opportunities in front of you, 5 opportunities in front of you, whatever it may be, whatever your scale is, or you've been handed an opportunity, you have to get it to work. Like if it doesn't work for you, it will follow you as a professional, right? I have mine, and you have yours, right? And luckily, the things that I have not done well have not been consequential. Like it had, knock on wood, the things that I have really mussed up, weren't like make or break kind of things. They were, progressive things. But for many people, when that opportunity falls in your lap, you have to crush it. It has to be there.
Right.
And the only thing that's going to save you from a total cluster of an execution process is going to be the fact that you're making decisions on data, not on gut, not on what you think, because your gut is probably more leaning towards, I just want it to work out this way. But the reality in front of you is that the parts and pieces aren't there. So the business people may not know how everything works. Leaders may not be as good as you think they are. The vision may not be as clear as you think it is. The adaptability of your business may not be within the window of what that transformation project is, right? My transformation is too aggressive. And so it's going to scare the crap out of everybody who's involved. And so suddenly they're just going to hunker and just wait. And like, if this goes well, I'll jump on board. But if it's not going well, I'm going to disassociate to the effort entirely, right? Like these are the things that just blow your stuff up, right? Yeah. It's not that that there wasn't this magical thing that happened. It's all these undercurrents of opinions and behaviors and types of perspectives that suddenly you're a third of the way in, halfway in, and you're like, what happened? It's like we're completely off base. We're skewed in the wrong direction, and this whole project isn't going well. What happened? I'm trying to modernize my financial system, or I'm trying to put into place a a new CRM, or I'm trying to, I don't know, fill in a blank for that. But the reality is that you have to have alignment. You have to be aware of the things that are just not ready to support the thing you want to do. And you have to face it head on because it's fixable. I think that's the thing that people most misunderstand, is that the thing that is preventing you from being successful is fixable, but it's not as fixable once you are in motion.
Right.
It's more fixable before you are in motion. Right. And if you fix it there and catch it there, then your project goes faster. Your effort goes faster. But if you're trying to fix some stuff and you're trying to release whatever, like if you're, and so that's the idea that really we work on a lot, is that you have to fix it before you go into motion, because once you're in motion, you have very little recovery time. And most of the people who are managing you or looking at what you're doing, the minute they see this thing start to skew, they're going to want to kill it. They're going to want to stop it and say, no, this thing's going off the rails. Sorry, you had your chance. It's done, right? It's that whole Gartner fail fast model, right?
Right.
What does that mean? That if you're 10% off, they're going to be, oh, nope, this isn't working anymore. That's done. Da, da, da. What does that do? It reduces potential for the company, reduces opportunity for you as a professional, but is also a black stain on you. Yeah. And more importantly, what I also talk to leaders about, the fact is that the amount of those energies that are being expended with no visible or recognizable result is demoralizing to the workforce. You can't continue to ask people to do project after project after project that either fail or don't make it all the way through or don't create value. Because people are going to be like, I want to, the mantra today, especially in the younger generation, is I want to do something that matters. I want to do something that contributes. I want to see it. But if you're cutting that off because it's 10% off, 15% off, then executives are like, no more money. That's it. No, this is going the wrong direction. It just all begins to compound. And that's where potential's lost, opportunity's lost, and all those kind of things.
Right. Well, and that's where we hope that processes come into place, where we have a measurable way of doing things. And too often in business, we don't really have a set, repeatable, predictable process as to how we're going to execute, implement, et cetera. And I think all paths sort of lead back to, well, that's how we have knee-jerk reactions. You said a lot there. I was taking some notes, and first of all, I think that let's see what you mentioned the LinkedIn 5%. I'm not so sure I don't question your number. I don't think that really has as much.
That's their data. I was at a conference in San Mateo, and they're up on the stage and they're like, this is what our data is showing, is that 5% in, people in LinkedIn are in a buying motion.
Yeah. Well, here's what I would have shouted out from the audience. Big deal. That's everybody's 5%. And actually, we're 18 years on polling that out. It has nothing to do with LinkedIn. You walk down the sidewalk and it's about 1 in 20 that actually will walk by you, not just a prospect, but a qualified prospect, meaning it's not only an issue there, but they've actually moved across the line. They're not even whining about it. They're actually searching for a solution. Now we got 19 other people that are sailing by. Where the sales community comes in is we say, well, okay, we all want that 1 out of 20 or so, that 5%.
That's right.
The reason why we'll work with LinkedIn, the reason why we try and be more intelligent about how we market ourselves is because I want probably about the 12 out of 20 that are saying, I'm not 100% happy with the way we're doing X, but I don't want to do anything about it yet because it really hasn't blown up in our face yet. But
that's right.
I'll whine about it if I trust you.
Right. So you're nurturing, right?
Exactly.
You're in that context of nurturing, right? And
exactly.
And so, but remember this as a salesperson is that, okay, now you've sold them this thing.
Right.
Okay. It has to create value for them. How is it going to create value for them? That it actually deploys or works in the way that you talked about it, right? If it doesn't do that, are they going to come back to you? are they going to look at you as being somebody who's effective, or are they going to drop that product? So I'll give you a real world example.
Okay.
Is today in intelligent automation, you've got a lot of tool sets out there for robotic process automation, right? And so bots, people are running bots and doing different things. For most of those firms, they spend more money trying to retain a customer than they do trying to, or they spend more money they spend more money trying to retain a customer who's not utilizing the product correctly than they do trying to sell them more product, right? So their biggest problem is that their salespeople can't sell because the product isn't getting used, and the customers just kind of keep dumping the product because they're like, well, we bought it. We thought it was this thing. We tried to implement it. It was harder than we thought. It's not working out. So they're releasing it, and they cannot fill the funnel fast enough to keep up with the amount of customers that are canceling the licensing on that product. And so they are changing their models in terms of how they're doing their licensing and working around different things. But the point being is that if your product in execution and delivery, right, you sell them an automation and a robotic process automation tool, and the customers are dumping that faster than you can fill the funnel for new customers, your uppers are not going to be pretty happy about the fact, because they can't grow. They're like, the entire sales force is just trying to maintain status quo. It's like the amount of incremental growth is so much lower. Now imagine that you're selling somebody a product, you've attached this sort of transformation readiness score to it. You're helping them align the execution. More of it's getting into production. More of it's getting utilized. The retention's going to be higher. And now you're able to sell based on, case studies, use cases, the ability of the market to say, oh yeah, we adopted this product. We implemented it successfully because they helped us understand our readiness to do it. That's what we're talking about, right? Because that's the thing that gets avoided. And that's where I think salespeople are running into the biggest challenge, is that they're selling stuff, but it's not getting used. And so people are dumping it. So now more pressure's under the sales cycle. Then marketing's jumping into the middle of that, trying to run a, more active funnel. And the whole thing is just this swirl of chaos. And it doesn't have to be that way, because if you can help the customer understand this is where you're out of alignment, and if you just adjusted 2 or 3 things, so I'll put it in a more simple way. It's
oh, you're not losing me, but go ahead, simplify.
Well, it's just the visual for me, right? Is, I kind of have these visuals. So the visual for me really comes, it's like, one of those scenes in Star Wars where the Millennium Falcon's trying to get away. Han Solo is going bananas in the cockpit. He's like, I thought we fixed it. They can't get into hyper, drive or whatever. They're trying to go, right? They're going to light speed or whatever, and they're trying to get going. And R2-D2 just walks over into this one little panel and sticks his little thing in there, and he twists it, and suddenly the thing turns blue, and off they go, right? That's what we do, right? We help you find that little knob that says, here's your alignment, and then boom, you're going, right? Because otherwise you're running around the Millennium Falcon trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and you have no insight into it. And that's what it's affecting the ability to sell product, to sell opportunity, to engage the customer, show the customer that it creates value, sell more into that customer, or use that customer to sell into other markets, rather than constantly having to try to recover because the customer's like, oh, I got this thing, we tried it, doesn't work, I want to cancel that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just one other number we'll throw in here, because you use the term like 3 or 4 times, and they're just dumping it, and it doesn't, and so they're dumping it.
Right.
What we fail to remember sometimes is not only are they dumping it, but they're telling people about their experience.
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
The number always shifts around, and the one I've got is from Technical Assistance Research Programs, TARP, which came out with 12 to 20 is their number of what a dissatisfied customer, how many people they'll tell about an experience like that. So we're really poisoning the well here if we're not careful.
Right. And, then it affects your net promoter score.
Yep.
And it affects the overall health of the business and the attitudes of the people working in the business, so on and so on and so on. So it all comes down to this very central common theme. is that ideas are great, execution is king, right?
Right.
If you're going to make a name for yourself, you have to deliver.
Right.
If you're going to make growth happen, you have to deliver. If you're going to transform your business, you have to deliver. There's no more second chances. The market is intolerant of those who can't deliver, although 70% of those you try don't. And as a result, you have this constant lagging in terms of the ability to move forward. And really, it's so simple, is that if you really do measure where the blind spots are in a repetitive way, and you can get that data super fast rather than waiting months for some consultant to give you some opinion, suddenly you're making faster, more nimble decisions. You're picking the things that are actually going to work versus the things that, as great of an idea as it could be, just isn't going to work out. Right. And now you're moving forward. Now you're moving chains down the field. You're getting red zone, your goal line work. And that's the thing that we really want to help companies with.
Right. Right. Well, here's where, our two worlds collide again, because, everybody thinks of salespeople as sort of like, on the car lot. And, I work with a lot of salespeople on the car lot, but that's one vision of it. What a really great salesperson does, we don't have that tool, is we're trying to ask questions. We're trying to study the problem to get people to react more proactively than reactively. I mean, once we wait for you to, your car is 10 years old and, knock on wood, you haven't put $10 into it. Yay. Well, then clearly it'll never break down, apparently. But we learn that people don't on their own fix small problems. They fix big problems. And so what we do is we're trying to get people into a conversation of, sometimes it's a what happens if, but a conversation of, well, let's not ignore the fact that failure can happen. Walk me through how we're planning on to react to that. You've created a tool. You've created a tool, and let's get out of the sales world. You've created a tool that's going to help people in a more proactive manner find those blind spots. Well, you kept saying, I was smiling on my side going, it's almost an oxymoron. It's called a blind spot for a reason. We're not supposed to see it. It's a blind spot. That's why we use tools and processes to get us out of our own head and to not be emotional, and be able to kind of methodically work through an issue, a problem, etc. So, it really lines up for me, and not the sales world, but in the corporate world, and it lines up there. How about, I'm curious how you got there. Do you have any like key mentors or somebody along the way that really kind of changed your direction into this path?
Really, it's my customers. Yeah. The thing that, from our story, from our perspective as a company, we've been in business 19 years, and luckily we've grown to have hundreds of people as employees across the country, right? So I'm fortunate to be in that role. The thing that we discovered early on is that we had a bit of a secret sauce in terms of executing technology efforts, large scale stuff, stuff that sometimes was $60, $80 million in size, and doing it very efficiently in months and those kinds of things. But the more successful we were, the more risk we took on every time we took on a new client, right? Because while we had a clean track record, every time we took on a new client, there was that potential that client wasn't going to work out, and that was going to be a dark spot on our resume as a company, right? And when you're in a small company, you can't afford a whole lot of dark spots, right? And, in consumerism, in many ways, you've got Yelp and different reviews, and, that stuff can be just, if you're not rating 5 all over the place, you're hosed, right? And that kind of a thing. So we had to develop a way to onboard a client in a way and understanding where are all the little picadillos. What is it the client is not telling us that we're going to show up on site? We've bid it a certain way, and suddenly we open up the door and it's like there's 10 things missing to get this thing to work that is going to take a significant amount of effort, right? So I'll give you an example. When you go in and let's say that you're modernizing a mainframe system into a new platform, One of the things that's going to be vital in that process is understanding what are the business rules associated with that technology. Like, not just the workflow, but when you hit to a certain point, what calculation is happening in the background where other things are dependent, right? And you have to have those business rules. I can tell you with direct experience in some very significantly sized systems with some very, very significant clients, that 90% of the time, they don't know their business rules. They don't know why it does a calculation a certain way. And now you're supposed to modernize this thing and put in a brand new system to do something that is existing. That kind of thing, if you have to go and extract the business rules out of an existing legacy system, as an example, that can take you 3 to 6 months. Who's paying for that? And there may be a client who says, no, you're on a firm bid here, or we only have this much budget to do it. Are you going to start eating those costs? Are you going to start to take the hit on that, right? Because I can guarantee you there's a lot of listeners right now who have been like, yeah, we've been in that situation. And that is a loss of potential, a loss of opportunity, right? And if you had known that going into the deal, you would have either priced it differently, had a different conversation with the client, provided them insight walking in the door. And so we needed to develop a way to figure out what's the truth. What room am I walking into and how is it structured? And we needed to do that quickly. And so it originally started as a method. And then over the years, we just took that method and we turned it into a technology, right? A product that works, virtually online and can do the work that our consultants took 2.5 months to do, now gets done in 5 days, and we have actionable data. And so what happens now is we walk into an initial meeting with a client and we have a report that tells you exactly where all of the blind spots are and what needs to happen to get them to be fixed. So day one, we are in motion. We are in forward action motion with the client. We're not in this sort of like discovery process that clients hate, because it's like, I hired you to get stuff moving and now you're sitting here, I'm paying you to learn my business. Yeah. Clients hate that. Like, they're over it, right? Yeah. And so now we walk in the door and say, here's the report that we assembled in the last 3 days. This is where all the missing parts are. Can we start to work on that right away and get these things resolved before we engage the process? And they're like, yeah, thank you. And so now we have precision, we have data-driven decisions. We're moving in a direction in terms of what is important, what's actually going to produce value in forward motion for the client, rather than just going out, what's under this rock, or what's under that rock? Right? We're not doing that kind of thing anymore.
Right. Well, I actually have a client right now who loves the word discovery. And I'm actually not fond of that word myself. I like the word trust building. I mean, I know other words I can use in a conversation, but I'm with you. I think a lot of times that's what our homework's for. I don't want to walk in and go, so tell me, walk me through a typical day. Let me drag my fingers down a chalkboard while I'm asking you that question.
Exactly.
There's too much data out there for us to start there.
And there's too much pressure. There's just too much pressure and expectation. Right. The clients don't have that much room anymore. I was talking to a client, Fortune 30 client, about 3 weeks ago. Their implementation time for a new product into market has gone from 18 months to 6 months. They've got no time to sit around and figure out what isn't ready to go or what's not going to work. They can't sit in the meeting anymore, mashing over different implementation approaches. Like, you show up, their team shows up in the room and they are actually not just planning, but actually beginning to do while they're planning. And so they're like, I've got to know where this stuff is. Like, I got to know it day one. Day one, I need to know where the picadillos are out there. Where is that rake in the yard I'm going to step on and get smacked in the face? And now I've got a bloody nose on this thing. They need to know it day one. And that's what's happening in market today. And I think that there's a lot of resistance. So it's like, no, we'll figure. It's like, no, like the minute you start to say, we'll figure it as we go, you've lost all credibility. You are now working in an ancient mindset, and it just is not effective in today's world.
Well, I'm gonna start wrapping this up. I got to tell you, I also love that. I love that rake in the face on the lawn. That is a really good visualization because we've all been there in our own way. Wow. I don't know what you're charging. By the way, I bet Jollis doesn't do commercials. I don't know what you're charging, but I've got to believe it's going to be far less than getting the rake in the face.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Concept.
Or having somebody do a manual assessment.
Right.
So,
all right. How do people get a hold of you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find. If you Google Alex Castro ReM Score or Alex Castro M Corp, M as in Mary Corp, I pop up all over the place. And thanks to people like you, I've got, podcast interviews out there and talking about this different topics. So happy to get on a call with somebody and walk through where they are and, just kind of help them get some orientation at the very least. So,
Excellent.
As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this topic because I see so many good ideas go to waste.
Let me tell you how passionate you are about this topic. Now, I had to speed up my internet a little bit on this side, but when I first met Alex about an hour ago, I was thinking to myself, boy, I hope Alex has enough energy. I'm used to some real energy on these calls. And he was like, Alex is like, nice to meet you, this and that. The moment we started talking about Alex's product, it's like, who's that guy? You really do. There's a lot of passion behind this product. I can see, I don't know if I would want to have a cup of coffee with you. If I do, we're going to have to talk about your product because I like the energy that comes with your product.
Right.
So,
because my passion has to match the passion of the listener, because the thing that's in front of them today, the opportunity in front of them today is that important to them. Yeah. And if I'm not passionate about helping them find the alignment, then where is the value in the process, right? I have to be excited about their success. And that's, at the end of the day, really what the product is about and what the whole methodology is about, is that let's get rid of all of those rakes in the yard and let you just run as fast and hard as you can to that finish line, because you deserve to see that thing come to life.
Yeah. Well, he's Alex Castro. His name is easy to spell. A lot of times I have to spell my guest names because I go, well, I'm Wanda Schmiegelheimer. And so just look me up. It's like, good luck with that. But Alex Castro, just the way it sounds. He's got to give me the name of that book one more time.
Measure, Execute, Win.
There you go. Measure, Execute, Win, right there on Amazon. You can find it. And if you're in an extra good mood, because my audience knows this, we don't just buy books. We write reviews because authors really appreciate them. And I appreciate you, Alex. I'm grateful you came on the show. Thank you so much for being on.
Oh, the pleasure is completely mine. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time. Until then, everybody, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.